So right now, just for some context, right, you've recently done a $22 million raise for Posh at a $110 million valuation, and you are growing.
As humans, we need to know that we have meaningful relationships, not just Instagram followers.
There's so many different pathways that spread from bringing people together.
And if you're the brand to connect two people who get along really well that didn't know each other before, people are going to love you.
You're asking your customers for their problems, not their solution.
They always say that second-time founders do better than the first time. You already learned all the things that it took to get there. So like you get there 10x faster. What's on my mind is how do we 10x over the next year at a minimum?
Today, on That One Time, I'm joined by Avante Price. Avante is the co-founder and CEO of New York tech event startup Posh, company on a mission to democratize access to the world of live events and experiences. Avante, at 23, just led Posh to a $22 million Series A funding round at a $110 million valuation. In this episode, you'll learn about the challenges of building a startup, how to find co-founders and investors, Avante's mindset on success, and the importance of events and connections in the modern world. I found our conversation extremely inspiring, and I think you will too. So I hope you enjoy this episode with Avante Price. If you like what you hear and want to support the podcast, please give us a rating, a follow, a review on whatever platform you're listening to. It helps us more than you can imagine as we're on a journey to 1,000 subscribers. Enjoy the episode. Avante, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Appreciate you coming. You've been a busy man since we last spoke. I haven't seen you in about 6 months since I got back to the city, but it's good to see you. I've been a huge fan of your work since we met. I've really liked your energy, the way you approach things, very down to earth, but you're a grinder. You hustle really hard. So
thank you.
Thank you for making the time. I'm a small fish just making my way in a big city, you know. But I want to get stuck into it. And if you can give an elevator pitch of who you are, what you do, and how you're contributing to the world, what would that sound like?
Yeah, so I'm Avante Price. I'm 23. I live in Soho, New York, and I'm working on a company called Posh. And how we're contributing to the world is empowering anyone to find social experiences where they can make more memorable moments with people that are dear to them that they care about. Cool.
And what made you want to move into the space of events and ticketing and the crazy world that is, you know, the in-person, high risk, high reward game of like the events world?
Insanity, probably.
I think most people say a similar thing. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think events are tangential to a lot of the relationships that I have in my life and that I value very strongly. And without events, I wouldn't have met a lot of the people that have helped me build what we've been building, right? Or also, I wouldn't have met a lot of people that are close to me in my personal life. And I think like when I moved to the city originally, it was for school, came to NYU. And the first thing I started doing, I learned how to DJ from my dad in high school, or actually even before that when I was a kid. And so I started doing that around the city just to meet people, right? And through the event scene in New York, which is massive, I was able to make a bunch of friends really quickly. And frankly, a little known fact, you know, I have Asperger's, and like making friends is not my strong suit, right? So it was an easy way to get myself into the door with people that just thought I was frankly cool, right, and wanted to come to these events, etc. So I think it's really just an awesome way to meet people and do exactly what the company's mission is, right, which is just establish and grow meaningful relationships.
So aside from the company itself, what qualities about you have led you into wanting to do what you're doing with Posh? Like what are kind of the foundations of your life? And maybe we can speak about the like Asperger's stuff, or like being a prodigy DJ back as a child.
Prodigy is a big word.
Viral prodigy DJ.
Yeah, prodigy is a big word.
How did that happen? Like, how did those early years basically impact you now to be who the person you are and contribute through Posh now?
I don't want to take it too dark, but I think just to be as real as possible, I think loneliness is like the easiest way to summarize, in the sense that as a kid I was super lonely, got bullied a bunch, right? Didn't have a lot of friends. DJing wasn't what it was when I came to college. So it wasn't really a skill I could have used to get myself friends. Wasn't necessarily so good at sports, and like running startups isn't as cool as it ends up being when you're an adult. When you're like 15, like no one cares or understands. So even though I was into that stuff, it didn't make me, cool or any better at making friends. And so I think, down to the root of it, it just really was like events were the one function of my life that brought me out of being lonely as a kid and even as a teenager. And I think I have a lot to give back to the event scene that allowed me to come out of my shell and make friends and understand social skills and things like that. And I'd love to give that back to anyone else who might be feeling lonely, right, by just kind of introducing them to this space. But yeah, like I think that though it sounds very aligned to the company mission, I think it is just a root cause of like the human condition of like none of us want to be fucking lonely, and I was extremely lonely, and the event space helped me not be lonely.
And what do you think led you to be lonely when you were younger? Because I kind of want to double click on that and like understand a bit further.
Yeah, I think when you want something that most people don't want, that is a cause for loneliness. And so what did you want? I wanted to start a software company from when I was like 14.
That's
and like
wild.
No one else was like, and I started a company actually in high school.
Sure, right?
Yeah. And that was my first kind of step into that space when I was at 14, 15. Ended up getting joined by a CTO, and it was awesome, but that doesn't really make you cool. It doesn't.
You're cool to me, bro.
Appreciate it, right? And when you're 14, 15, all you want to do is be cool. And so, I don't know. I think it really just came down to like being interested in things that other people weren't interested in. The things that I was interested in that other people were interested in, like basketball, I just wasn't good at basketball. Like I was a nerd and I'm 5'9". Like it just didn't work out,
Yeah, sure.
And so fundamentally it's just like when you're thinking over here and everyone else is thinking over here, it causes you to not see eye to eye with other people your age.
Sure. Until you find your people.
Yeah, and I think there's other things beyond that. Like I skipped a grade, so I was always socially behind everyone by a year.
So you skipped ahead of grade?
Yeah, I skipped ahead of grade. I also homeschooled for 2-3 years when I was a kid. So there's a lot of like, I already had the problems of just having Asperger's and being on the spectrum to an extent. And then because of that, my mom pulled me out of school for a few years, which then
do you
just
regret
like,
that? Do you wish
no, because of that, I was able to skip a grade because I learned so much more in that period with her. And I loved, getting closer with my mom. And also I only worked, frankly, 3-4 hours a day on schoolwork, and then she just took me to like museums and things.
That's sick.
But because you're not dealing with like all the other nuance of school, you're able to learn so much more, right?
Yeah.
And so I think homeschooling 110% is bad for like social skills for kids, but I do think from a learning perspective, if that's what you're optimizing for, like it 100% is more productive, and I got a ton out of it. So just the culmination of all those things together just led to a very lonely and different path as a kid than most other people my age, and so it just ended up being hard to relate.
Fair enough. Do you feel like you relate now?
To the people that I surround myself with, and I find it very hard to be around people that I don't relate to, and even just to like hang out or do something like this with them, because I just don't see eye to eye, and that frankly like brings up that childhood trauma, right? Of like, I don't want to try to relate to people anymore because I spent my whole childhood trying to do that. So if I can't hold a conversation, or I'm not genuinely interested in what you have to say, like, why are we doing this? Is the kind of blunt truth of it. For sure.
Well, look, for what it's worth, I read your 15-year-old blog, and you're way ahead of the other 15-year-olds.
Shit.
And that creates a framework of thinking that I think is something that is really paying dividends now. And it's a long life. We'll see where that ends up going. But the foundation was there very early. Where do you think that foundation came from?
It's a great question. my parents are not entrepreneurs in the sense that everyone thinks of when they think of an entrepreneur, right? They don't run software companies or even brick and mortar businesses necessarily, but they are entrepreneurial in the sense that they got English degrees and they didn't want to be teachers in a school. And so what they did is they ended up creating their own freelance businesses where they're freelance writers, resume writers, English tutors, ESL for people that are, English as a second language, trying to learn how to speak English in the business setting and to learn how to coexist in the American economy. And so through that, they built up these businesses that frankly, never got to any meaningful scale, but they taught me from the, early ages that like I could create my own future, right? And like, though we didn't even own a house or live in a big place or frankly, have much money ever, like they got to do what they wanted to do and live on their own schedule, right? And work the hours they wanted to work during the day. And they would tell me all the time, like, we're not wealthy because we've chosen this path, because we wanted ownership over our lives. And I think I originally resented that a lot because I would just see my friends get the Nintendo DS and I couldn't get it because we couldn't afford it. But in the long run, I've come to appreciate that was instilled in me early on of just like paving my own future. I think that combined with the desire to not be financially unstable like I was in childhood, created the drive to have the best of both worlds. I don't think you have to like give up financial stability to own your day to day.
No,
right?
Of course not.
And so that was the one area we didn't necessarily agree on, but I think that taking those learnings has been super valuable.
Well, I mean, that's what we do, right? We take the learnings of the previous generation, we try to iterate and add to it. So
yeah,
it makes sense.
Exactly.
What was going to say? No, it's gone. Doesn't matter. So the other thing that I noted on what you said about kind of the importance of in-person events and in-person connection, like how much more important is that now in the digital age?
The short answer is very. I don't know how much you're on Twitter, but there was this big Sam Altman interview that was going around a bunch, like a week or two ago, around him saying that like there's going to be a massive premium on in-person experiences. I'm sure you saw that, right? Yeah. Because as AI evolves, we're not going to even know what's real and what's not on the internet. And if we're actually interacting with a human or an AI, or if content is a deep fake or that person really said that. And the only way to really verify a relationship or even two-way communication or multi-person communication is going to be in person. I know that I'm speaking to you right now. There's no way that you could invalidate that, right? As of now, right? And then you can get into simulation theory and other things that, yeah, we could talk for hours about those. But the in general, right, I can validate that I'm speaking to you. And so the only way that you'll be able to validate interaction will be in person. And like I was saying in the beginning, right, as humans, like we need to feel like we belong. We need to know that we have meaningful relationships, not just Instagram followers, because I don't feel close to any of my Instagram followers or the people that I follow, right? I feel close to the probably 10, 20 people that I've seen in the last week, right? And the more I see those people, the closer I'll feel to them.
Well, we should hang out more.
Exactly. And even right, like I haven't seen you in a while, and I already feel so much closer to you than literally 99% of the other people that I would consider like in my network, because we're here today and we're hanging out, right? And so I think just that value is so important. That the only way that we'll be able to do that is through events. And I think the kind of double click onto that is that people don't know what events to go to or what experiences they need to find. They want to find events and they want to go to events and they want to connect in person, but they don't know what to do. And so that's kind of the next phase of the company is like, how do we curate it, right? We have a ton of events. We had 5,000 events last month. How do we show you the 5 that will be relevant to you this month? Yeah,
cool. Well, I agree completely. And I think that the connection that you build from events, I've been working in events for 10 years and I've seen relationships, best friends develop, like children, like, there's so many different pathways that spread from bringing people together. So I think it's a really, really powerful thing to be a part of. And I think you've made the smart move going on the tech side, not the actual curation side, because the curation side is... It's an animal.
But I will say that we're trying to solve the IRL operational side with technology. it's obviously a long battle, but we're making strides there.
Yeah, cool. Random side note, but you wrestled, right?
I did, yes.
What impact did being a high level, you a collegiate wrestler as well?
No. Yeah, I was a high school wrestler. I could have wrestled in college. Like I would have been a walk-on, but yeah, and like I was not necessarily like great at it, but I think that it frankly teaches you and taught me like more about discipline than anything else in my life has ever taught me, even more than my company, frankly. I use the learnings from that towards when I feel like this is too hard, right?
What were the learnings?
Well, I guess to provide a story, right? It's we had this tournament the day after Thanksgiving every single year.
Yeah.
For 4 years of high school.
Yeah.
And at that tournament, you had to weigh in at a certain weight. And in wrestling, right, for those who are not familiar, you have to cut weight every single week while you're in season. It's a 3-month season. You're usually cutting between, 5 to 10% of your body weight is fluctuating back and forth because you weigh in, then you eat a ton, then you wrestle, and then you're overweight the next Monday, and you got to cut it all off, right?
That's wild.
And this specific tournament was after Thanksgiving every year. So I had to skip Thanksgiving for my entire high school experience.
But I've had that too, don't worry. I've never had a Thanksgiving. So.
Fair. Most of the world has never had Thanksgiving. So I do see that as a very American viewpoint, but I think one that's more relatable and less American of me is this one experience in my sophomore year. I had to cut from 115.8 to 104. I was 115.8 on the Monday morning. I had to weigh in on Friday morning at 104. So that was about 10% of my body weight I had to cut. And meanwhile, I was a skinny, scrawny kid. Like I was 115. That's like, I was nothing.
Yeah, I'm like 200.
Yeah, like, and so what I had to do, right, what that consists of is you get up at 4 a.m, you go onto a treadmill, you put on a trash bag and sweatpants and a Canada Goose, you run 3 to 4 miles, you get off, you can't drink water because you just lost water weight. Then you go the entire day, you can basically have one water fountain trip per period. Right? So you can go each period of school. We had 8 periods. You can go and like sip for like 10 seconds and then you got to go back to class. And that's all you can have throughout the day, as well as a Cliff Bar. No lunch, just Cliff Bar. You have to do that. Then you go after school, you do a 2-hour wrestling practice where you're basically fighting someone for 2 hours. You can have 1 bottle of water during that. You go home and you eat a plate of food about, the size of your 2 hands together. And that's the whole thing for 5 days straight. The last day, I could not feel moisture in my mouth. Like it was disgusting. Like you never want to have an experience like that again. But boiling it back down to like learnings, it's like when you go through something like that's that difficult and you literally cut 10% of your body weight with no body fat, you don't eat, you don't drink. And I'm sure there's a bunch of people that, have fasted before. So maybe I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. Right. But like for me, that was a very visceral moment in my life where if I think about like, oh my God, like I have to like get my inbox to 0, you know what I mean? Or like pitch this VC, like nothing you do in the professional world is as hard as things that you do physically. Mm-hmm. And I think just taking that every day and taking into account makes life frankly just a lot more fun and a lot easier.
Is that why you like long distance running?
Yeah. I think it's good to keep physical like pain, for lack of a better word, or uncomfortability in your life at least a couple times a week. Just so that again you can take that and be like, I just ran 10 miles, like what is this professional thing I have to do, this networking event I have to go like talk to people at? Like nothing is that difficult in the professional world if you can put yourself through physical pain.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I during my peak just chaotic time period of trying to scale up the event business and doing like some back-to-back festivals, the biggest weekend I ever did of shows was like a Saturday on one side of the bay, think like 2-hour drive, and then a Sunday on the other side of the bay, and they were both 4,000, 5,000 capacity sites.
Wow.
So, and I had a team of like 5 or 6.
Wow.
And then a subcontractor team.
Yeah.
And we were losing a boatload of money, so I had cash flow issues that I was covering myself. My business partner at the time, well, still to this day, had no money and like pretty much just like, so I like covered all of his losses.
Wow.
I was covering all of these losses. I've got like suppliers saying they're not rocking up to site without payment in full, but there's not enough. It was a whole thing.
Wow.
And we pulled it off, and we did like nearly 6,000 tickets across the weekend. Lost a fuckload of money.
Yep.
But we did it.
Yep. That's all that matters.
And I remember there was probably about 2 months out, every single day, 7 days a week, I was like lying in bed to wake up going, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to move. This is a complete shit show. This is fucked. Like staring at the ceiling for 10 minutes, mustering the courage to get out of bed to move. And then I committed to myself that every single morning I would get into this cold plunger that I'd bought and do 3 minutes. So I'm like lying in bed thinking to myself, oh, I have to get up and do this work. Oh, I have to do the cold plunge because I committed to it. Yeah. And every single morning I got in that cold plunge and I did 3 minutes and it was horrible. And then I got out of the cold plunge and I said, that's going to be the hardest thing I'm going to do today.
Yep.
And then I just kept pushing on.
Yep.
So I fully understand and agree with you.
Exactly. Yeah. And you were also probably so much more clear for the rest of the day too, because like that just wakes you up.
Just ready to go to war.
Yeah,
bro.
exactly. No, you need a little bit of physical pain in your life so that everything else just seems a lot easier. Like, what's the worst? You lose some money, you're gonna make some more money later on. Like that doesn't hurt as much as like that cold plunge, which really.
Oh man.
I've done a cold plunge. It's no joke.
It's no joke. I mean, the longest cold plunge I've done is like 22 minutes.
Wow. But at a certain point, it gets like to be kind of just like the stasis, right?
You go through waves.
Really?
It comes and goes. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So
interesting. Your body never just warms up to it and gets used to it.
Yeah. Your body temperature goes down and then like it doesn't really ever get any easier. Like it gets easier for a bit and you move and then basically what's happening is there's like a film that's building on your body. Right. And the moment you move, you break the film and then it's cold again.
Wow.
So that's why it gets easier.
So just don't move.
Well, don't move if you're a pussy.
So you're in there just like splashing around.
20 minutes. Oh, anyway, we digress. I want to talk about, so right now, just for some context, right? You've recently done a $22 million raise for Posh at a $110 million valuation. I don't know what your ownership structure is like, but I'm guessing you've got a reasonable majority. That's a pretty solid, and you are growing quickly. So that's a very, very solid space to be moving forward. Yep. But to rewind all the way back, I want to talk about your first business, Chorebug, how it played out and what lessons you learned that allowed you to take into the next endeavor.
Yeah, so that was started, just for a little more context, out of just, again, a need for some cash, frankly, that wasn't as deep as this company, which I think was started more out of the more visceral feeling of wanting to solve loneliness and belonging. And that was just started as I was a kid, wanted to make some money. I was 14, 15 years old, had my first job as a bagger of groceries at a grocery store, quit after one day. And I printed out some signs that I put up around the local Starbucks, Panera Bread that said local high school are available for odd jobs. And you could I snipped it so you could pick off the things similar to those little signs around Soho that are looking for the perfect woman. Yeah.
I'm trying to get him on the podcast and he fucking he sent me a PR contact. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I don't know what this is, but I'm so curious.
I bet you hit up the PR contact.
I did, yeah. And they said not yet, but eventually.
Wow.
We come back.
Well, I'm sure his episode will be more entertaining than mine.
No,
but
man, this is great. This is amazing.
But effectively, we started out by just putting up these signs similar to that guy. And a bunch of people started calling me, right? And I started doing a bunch of odd jobs, work on the weekends for a bunch of people around my neighborhood. I was a wrestler, so I, physically fit, doing random stuff, all sorts of stuff, moving, weed picking, etc. And through that, I had way too much interest for the bandwidth I had. Just I'm one person, I could only do so many jobs.
Yeah.
So I made a group chat of 30 kids at my school is what it ended up being, and I'd send a job info, and whoever responded me first got it. That was literally all it was, just a group me. You respond me first, and they got it. I created this page. People were submitting job requests with all their credit card info through a Squarespace contact form that I would then put into Square. It was all no code. After the job was confirmed, then I would just put it into Square. I'd Venmo the kid who did the job. I'd keep the cut myself. It was very, very
bro.
manual. And then about 2 years in, it was doing really well at my school. This finally got me, notability at my school. I had no friends, but I had everyone wanted to come work for this company because they wanted to make money. And so this one kid, I was a senior, he was a freshman, approached me. His name was Oliver, and he said, "Hey man, like I see this blowing up. He's an amazing kid, and I want to, get my hands on something." He had a very similar entrepreneurial spirit, even younger than myself. He was literally like 14.
Yeah.
And basically was like, "Look, I know, like I can see what you're doing here. This is completely manual. I'm technical. Like, let me build a software product to productize all of this." And we worked together. He ended up building an entire product. We got into an NYU accelerator after my first year at NYU. He came out to the city for the summer, and we really tried to expand it beyond our original school of Evanston in Chicago. And it was very hard to stick with the high school model of only high schoolers available. People would churn after their senior year, right?
Yeah, sure.
People were not reliable as freshmen and sophomores. Juniors were the most reliable. Seniors were already 1 foot out the door, so they didn't really care, right? And so there's this weird nuance around just like the model didn't work fundamentally because of like who we were trying to work with.
Yep.
And the retention wasn't really there. And starting up a new school as students who weren't from that school was also difficult.
Yep.
So it started winding down, and I kind of simultaneously had started Posh.
Yeah.
Sold most of my shares to Oliver. I think all of them actually, and then actually he ended up passing away sadly.
Shit.
Yeah, about 2 years ago now.
Oh man.
But the company was already winding down. But yeah, that was definitely a very sad ending to that company. I think actually if he was still around today, he was had plans to take it further. And potentially it could be very, very massive company today. But yeah.
Shit. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So what did you take from that experience, and how did it impact the success now?
Yeah, I took a lot of learnings. I think the number one thing is like they always say that second time founders do better than the first time, at least up until the point that they got to in their first venture, right? Because like you already learned all the things that it took to get there. So like you get there 10x faster. So like just simple things about like product market fit and like customer discovery and understanding how to like really like pull the problems out of users and not the solutions. Don't ask them for features, right? But ask them their problems, and then you come up with the solutions and features and iterate a lot and get the product in people's hands really quickly. And also just go to market in terms of like, how do you set up a CRM, right? Like really simple stuff that like at this point just seems like child's play, right? But when you've never done it before, like obviously it takes a very steep learning curve of just like basic sales, basic customer success,
even just setting
support,
up an LLC,
a support email, an LLC, like just little things that are like commonplace for any business you interact with. But like getting all that off the ground for the first time around was definitely like a learning curve that I was able to do immediately with Posh. And so I think just learning how to set up a business, how to get your first customers, and how to think about also like, it was really great that we got to think about beyond just our original school. Like how do you think about scale and like what scale can be in the grand scheme of things, but also how do I get from point A to B before thinking about Z?
Yep.
And yeah, just again, also working with a co-founder. I think that's something that's like invaluable relationship, and like having that relationship prior was great when I met Eli and we started working on Posh together.
Yeah, actually on that note, like how do you go about finding a good technical co-founder? Because are you not technical? So I'm guessing you don't code, you don't have
no
experience.
I've definitely tried to bang my head against the wall a few times to learn, and I think there's certain brains that it works for and certain that it doesn't. Candidly, both of my co-founders came to me.
Well, does that not say something? So what are you bringing to the table that makes it appropriate for a technical co-founder to feel safe to put their energy into something?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think the answer is still the same as how do you find a good technical co-founder, which is like, and how do you raise money, which is like fundamentally it's like boiled down is do good work, and like the right people will come, whether it's investors, a co-founder, talent, whatever it might be. Just be a good person, do good work hard, right? When you're actively looking for a co-founder, that means you're spending time not actively working on your idea, right? Yeah. So like fundamentally in both scenarios, like I was just grinding away on an idea that these people saw value in from a tech perspective, right? Like, wow, if you applied software to this idea, it could be so much bigger, right?
Yeah.
Or we could solve bigger problems.
Yeah.
But I gave them the confidence that if they built the software, I could manage the back office and I could actually get people to use that software just through the go-to-market kind of chops that I brought to the table.
Yeah.
In the scenario for Posh, right, I had started an event brand with a few friends that Eli was definitely a part of, but he was actually just our videographer and photographer creating our content. So he'd create flyers, after movies, etc. But I was the kind of main force behind bringing people out, getting the venue, dealing with all the orchestration. Events are, a ton of orchestration. And so by me doing that, right, getting 300 people in a room, getting a venue, handling logistics, handling the P&L, understand the profits, like just basic business acumen, I think that gave Eli the confidence, right, that like, okay, if I build the software here and we take this to the next level, Avante will be able to handle the actual go-to-market, finance, legal, all the other rigmarole. Because great engineers don't want to deal with that. They want to deal with the hard problems underneath the hood, right?
Yeah.
Which is building the cool product and tackling really, really complex technical problems.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with legal. They don't want to deal with like hitting up a bunch of 100 cold emails and hitting up a bunch of users, right? They don't want to deal with any of that. They want to build an awesome product. And if you can make them confident that they can just focus on that, I would assume it'd be very easy for you to find a lot of great, smart, technical people to work with.
Quickly though, I'd like to chat about our sponsor, Vitadrop. Vitadrop is an Australian-based hydration and supplement company that has 4 amazing products, one of which I try to take every night before bed, a magnesium sleep sachet. The first time I took this sleep sachet, I woke up the next morning with a 30% jump on my REM sleep, which was recorded on my Whoop, and I thought it was a typo. It has improved the sleep of both myself and people that I've recommended it to so much that I had one friend say to me, and this is word for word, "Mate, Vitadrop is life-changing. I spent 7 hours straight asleep for the first time in 10 years, 3 nights in a row, and I can't believe it." They're also not a one-trick pony. They have a bunch of different drinks for different purposes, including a general hydration drink, a focus drink, which I have here, that can replace your morning coffee, and a collagen supplement. So if you're interested, use the code TOT for 25% off your next order. It helps you with a discount and it helps us allow the podcast to continue. So I think that's a win-win in my books. Now back to the episode.
I've got an idea that's been floating around in my brain for a very long time, and I think the time is now to do it. And I am looking for a technical co-founder. Maybe we can talk offline, and you might be able to point me in a direction. But
for sure,
yeah, it's been in my brain for about 10 years.
Wow, I think it's just time to pull it out of the brain.
And I've just tapped it. I think with the development of AI and how intelligent these systems are getting, it's time. Because previously I couldn't find clear solutions forward. Anyway, we'll talk about it later. But another thing that I noted that I want to chime in on very quickly before we move on was you asking your customers for their problems, not their solutions. I really like that, and all the successes in my life have been scratching my own itch. Things that I look around in the world and go, fuck, this is annoying that this doesn't exist, or I want this for me, and then you just create it. So I think there's a really, really nice like nugget of wisdom in that point. There's a million ways to deal with things, but understanding what the pain points for people and then helping to find solutions for those pain points is critical to the success in everything you do. So
it's very important. Yeah, I think just a good example of that would be like when we talk to event organizers, right? They'll tell us, what kind of marketing features do you have? What they're really asking for is, right, it's like, well, why are you asking for that? Well, I want to sell more tickets. Like, my problem is I'm not selling enough tickets, right? They don't care about marketing features. For all they care, I could go put up flyers about their event in Starbucks as long as it drives more sales. It really does. I could buy 100 tickets to their event. They don't really care, but I think that's like a good way to think about it, right? And in any context, it's like, what is the root problem here, so that we can then think of creative ways to solve that, because they don't really care about email blasts. They just care about, am I going to sell more tickets on this platform than other platforms?
Sure, exactly. And are you going to sell more tickets on this platform than other platforms?
Of course.
I love it. So you've heard it here first. Well, it does seem like Posh's strategy has been to really dig into the New York City culture. So what are some key strategies in building community in like a place like New York, and how has building community in a city like New York resulted in the growth and success of the business?
Yeah, so community is a massive part of the business. It's been kind of ad hoc and everyone's had a hand in it until recently. We just hired a head of community, shout out Kevin. He just came from Reddit. I'm really excited to have him. and we're investing a ton in community.
What does that look like?
Yeah, it's second to product in terms of importance at Posh. And what it looks like is education and relationships. And so on the education component, it's what we're really trying to do here is empower the next phase and next generation of event organizers, right? To create massive brands that could maybe even compete with a Live Nation one day, right? They need to learn, right? But how do they learn? By relationships with people that are a step ahead of them, right? And so effectively what community looks like at Posh is we're creating a bunch of programs where we'll host a dinner and there will be a very large organizer there and then 10 smaller organizers, and they can do an AMA and ask them anything about, you know, how do they scale their business? How do they think about marketing? How do they think about operations, finance? What resources do they have in place? How do they find a venue, right? Whatever it might be, they can ask this person anything. And in exchange, we're giving everyone free dinner and a free open bar. Simultaneously, we also just do more collective engagements. We just did one in Atlanta last week where we hosted a dinner for 70 people in Atlanta who were not just organizers, but DJs, organizers, venue owners, photographers, anyone in the event space who has a voice and has like a stake in the space in that city. And they all came and they didn't know anything about Posh before coming. We had a few of the organizers that use us currently that came, but they walked away from it like, wow, this company really invested in me. They just gave me free dinner and drinks just to come meet other people in my space. And you'd be surprised how many people don't know each other, even in a market like Atlanta, where you'd think that the like nightlife scene is pretty well tight knit, right?
Yep.
And so kind of boiling that down to your question, it's about connecting people who would get along very well who don't know each other right yet. And if you're the brand to connect two people who get along really well that didn't know each other before you came into the mix, people are going to love you, right? I mean, look at any dating app that's successful, right? And then if you meet your husband or wife on Hinge, you're going to go tell everyone in the world about that. And it's the same through our product, but it's also the same for the go-to-market strategy of we're not trying to send cold emails to the world. We want to go and help this organizer learn and meet this organizer, right? Learn from and meet this organizer. And if they create a great fruitful relationship because of Posh, they're going to go tell the world about Posh and we don't have to do anything. And so community is really like word of mouth marketing brought to another level and just providing value to people without talking about your brand and letting them do the hard work of telling everyone else about it.
How do you, I mean, especially with investors now, there's a kind of a standard of expectation of a return on investment from a lot of these people, right? So how do you then package that justification up into dealing with an investor? You're like, I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be quantitative about everything, right? I think there are ways to be quantitative even about that. So that dinner we hosted in Atlanta, right? It's about how do we track, because everyone RSVP'd through Posh. So then we track their accounts and see how many people actually create an event from that event, right? And then out of that event, they all have attendees, and how many of those attendees create an event, right? And how then new attendees, and maybe some of them convert into organizers themselves. And so fundamentally, because we own the event platform that they attended that community experience through, we can track the user life cycle all the way down the funnel.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, so data, and ability to, and the back-end technical analysis skills to be able to interpret the data in meaningful ways.
Exactly, which is the number one thing. You know, it's very hard to know if you're going in the right direction if you don't know what the right direction is. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, you're better to do nothing than go the wrong way if you can avoid it. But sometimes going the wrong direction for a bit is part of the right direction. So
that's
not for too long though. Well, look at, event ticketing is very like a very competitive space with like big money in it and like a graveyard of businesses in this space. Like, what makes you, Eli, and like Posh different, and how do you plan on like long-term surviving and potentially thriving?
Yeah, so ticketing as a word just makes me nauseous because generally, A, because that's the sentiment around it, right? There's a massive graveyard. But B, we're so much more than ticketing. Ticketing is more of a feature than what the platform is, right? It's a feature. It's not a product. Yeah. And so it feels like we're put in a box. But the simple way to think about the vision for Posh is TikTok for events. And it's twofold in that sense, where A, as a consumer, we're providing you really, really curated events that speak to you based on your past interests, as well as where people in your contact book are going, right? So you can basically attach your contacts and see where people are going, which is getting deployed by the time this podcast is out. And then the
Wait,
other
hold on.
flip side of it.
So let me this is an interesting thing that I've never heard before.
Yeah.
So you can go into my phone numbers and you can track who's got a Posh account through
Their
my
phone number.
So
Exactly.
phone contact, and then you can follow them on Posh.
And you'll be able to see exactly where they're going in your feed, just like a For You feed.
I don't think I've
for
ever
events.
seen that before.
You haven't. And then on the twofold side of the TikTok analogy is we're making it as easy for creators to host events as we did for TikTok to allow creators to create videos. If you think about how complex a TikTok video is, like these 16-year-olds in their basement were never able to make any video as complex as this, right?
Yeah.
With all the different edits and things like that. But TikTok gave you a content creation studio in a box. We're giving you an event in a box and just making it extremely easy. You have a community. It's probably online. You're probably not able to, not you, but anyone, right? And you're not able to monetize it very much. How do you do that in person? And even this is a great example. We actually have podcasts that use us, and they have a massive following in a certain city, and they say, hey, we're doing a meetup. All of our listeners are very similar. We're going to charge $10 a head and have a meetup in X, Y, or Z city. And it's really a new monetization strategy for any online community to bring their community IRL. So again, I think that's really the difference here is like we're more of a community platform for consumers to find communities that relate to them and for the community builders to start and scale them. And ticketing is just a payment processor for an event. It's not creating new supply of events that never would have happened. And it's not empowering people to scale from 0 to 1 or 1 to 10. It's kind of empowering you to just do what you're already doing.
Interesting. I like that idea. I'm like envisioning a like an upload form where you got a 15-second promo video and your AI like curates like things this week, and you can just go through it and you click on the ones you like and RSVP to the ones you like.
Exactly.
It's not a bad idea.
It's not.
You're like, stay tuned.
I'm hoping it's not,
I love it. Well, when did you realize you had a potential like winner on your hands, and like what was the I feel like there's a moment of inflection where you go with any business or any project where you go, when was your moment?
It's a good question. I don't think we necessarily have a winner at any moment. I feel like you're only as good as like you're like your last
quarter
KPIs. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's hard to take stock in what's been done because as a founder, you're always obsessed with the next step.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, what's on my mind is how do we 10x over the next year at a minimum.
Yeah.
Right. And like, though we've actually...
In a year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And it's like, well, we've actually, effectively infinity x'd from 0 to where we are now.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really matter, right? Because now we're here and now it's about getting to the next step. And so I don't know if we ever, I think frankly, most recently when we did the Series A, like it was one of those moments where we got the validation from other people that this could be a big winner.
Yeah.
We were always confident that this was something that needed to exist in the world, both on the consumer and the organizer side.
Yeah.
But without the validation from people who run multi-billion-dollar funds, it is right. You do feel sometimes like you're, screaming into a box and that no one's listening and that maybe you're a psycho, maybe you're going on the wrong path.
Maybe you
right?
have to be a little bit psycho.
And you do, right? And you have to get told no 100 times before you get told yes if you want to build something that has never existed before. Because fundamentally what you're trying to do here is build something that no one would have ever believed in, because that's why it's new and no one else would have been crazy enough to go after it. And most people are going to think you're crazy and some people are not. And 9 times out of 10, maybe you are crazy, right? But maybe, you've hit gold and, the convergence of those two factors comes together where A, you're not crazy, and B, the one person that took a bet is also not crazy and you have a win on your hands. But it's, always about just getting to the next step to get to there. I don't think it's ever like, oh, we have a win now or at this other point, because there's multiple companies that have raised 100 times as much as us and gone right out of business. So,
So how do you maintain the focus around all the noise then?
it's cliche, but it is being in love with the journey, not the destination, right? Like, I really just love working on this company every day, and I'm very manic depressive when it comes to our KPIs. So if there's like a month where one KPI is a little bit down, I'm like, oh, this really sucks and it ruins me, but it makes me work 10 times harder. But I love when KPIs are great and everything's green and up and to the right, like, it really is like better than any drug you could ever do. Like, it's just like, it's so fulfilling. And it's also, you can see it in the team, right? Like, everyone's just so happy and so much more motivated and so excited. And like, they don't want to lose that feeling of seeing the graphs go up and to the right. It sounds so superficial, but it's such an amazing feeling that I think just like running after that high and never wanting that high of building and continually growing something to leave is how you stay focused and never get distracted by the noise. Because like, an exit actually would relieve us from that kind of emotional high that we're constantly in, right?
But the scrappiness is where the magic is, I think.
Exactly. And so actually, I don't even like, there's some people that say like after an exit, like, they are less happy than when they were in the grind, because then it's like, well, now what? Right?
Yeah.
And so like, genuinely, like, you have to love every moment of just growing what you're working on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, on that note, would you say you're a balanced person, or would you say you're like unbalanced and very focused on like one thing to the potential harm of other parts of your life?
I'm definitely extremely focused, not balanced. I'm balanced when it comes to health, because that's very important. I'm a big fan of Brian Chesky, just because similar, consumer marketplace business, and just someone who's,
Brian Chesky,
the founder of Airbnb.
Oh yeah.
And he's just done so much in the world that like, I listen to a bunch of his podcasts, and a lot of what he talks about is like, nothing's possible without like good health, right?
Yeah.
So like, from a balance perspective, like, yeah, I'm always optimizing for 8 hours of sleep, a workout in the morning, eating healthily, you can't eat McDonald's and stuff like that. Haven't drank in almost like a year and a half.
Same.
But like, when it comes to relationships or things outside the business, or really focusing on anything outside of the business for my day-to-day, like, health is first, the business is second, everything else is third. And it's really going to be difficult for anything in that third category to take any of my time from the second category.
How long does that last for, do you think?
It's a great question. It's what keeps me up at night.
Do you have a girlfriend?
No. I've been through two in this journey.
I've been through two.
I've had two in this journey, and it was a great experience. And that was exactly the reason that both relationships ended, where I was dedicating more of my time to my company than these relationships, and I had to be straight up with them and honest that this was my calling, this was my purpose, and that there was never going to be a world where I would prioritize the relationship over the success of this business, especially as we scaled. And I had other people on our team who were dedicating their lives to this. It wasn't just me and Eli anymore. Like, there are other people who've moved from other states, right, to come join this mission to work in person in New York. And so how could I, snuggle with someone until 10 in the morning when I have people that are at the office at 8 and they're grinding their asses off, like, candidly, right?
Yeah.
And so this is going to hurt me in the long run, but I think it is true. I think it is true that, like, fundamentally, you're right. Like, how long does it last? Like, I do want to have a family. I do want to have kids. I do want to have a wife, etc. But like, I'm 23 years old, and as of right now, there's so much behind us. We've just raised all this money. We have a bunch of support. We have a bunch of people that are extremely dedicated, that like, taking any fuel off the fire does not seem like it would make any sense. And having a relationship takes fuel off the fire. There's no way around that.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're in different stages of our lives. Like, I'm 31 now, and I've never come anywhere close to the levels that you're doing. But I've done the grind for a bit, and I'm like, okay, cool. I just like, I want to do this. What I want to do this in a balanced way. Like, I want to be able to, I'm thinking, I'm like, cool, kids, like, marriage, like, that takes some time and effort, because I'm looking back at 80 and I'm going, what am I going to be more happy about? My like grandkids and like a table full of 50 people that are all like offspring of me and my like connections to the world, or, a business? I don't know. I don't know. I lean towards the family, but I think there's space for both.
I think there's space for both, and I also think that it really is like, I'm very excited about the Series A because it's going to help us show people that this is not just ticketing.
Yeah.
And this is not just an events platform, but this is a platform that's truly helping people connect IRL, which is very, very necessary.
Yeah.
And a lot of the pushback I would get from our relationships, or even my friends that I wouldn't hang out, that would tell me like, "Oh, I'm carrying our friendship on my back," is like, they would be like, "Oh, you're just working on like this events platform. Like you go to events and like deal with promoters. Like what is this? Like why are you taking this so seriously?" Right? And they never got it. They never got like why this is actually like something that's truly important to society and to like the human existence. And so they would just kind of be undermined why I was so passionate about this. And so what I'm getting at here is like, if you're working on a business, there's businesses, then there's startups, and there are society changing startups, not B2B SaaS, not CRMs. Like there are companies that are affecting consumers' lives on a daily basis. And I think that the meaning derived from really building a big business that does that, right, is much grander than like other types of businesses. If you dedicated 100 hours a week to, you name it, selling waters, I have no idea, right?
Yeah.
But like there's a lot of businesses that just don't have as much meaning as what I personally think we're doing for the world, whether or not other people see that. And so I agree with that. I think by the time I'm 30, I definitely want to start thinking about my family and things like that. And I definitely value family. But when you have so much traction and so much passion, not just for myself, from the team, like there's nothing we, should be doing but like maximizing that.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. And how do you made a brief note about, not wanting to be at home, 10 in the morning cuddling with a girl when you've got a team of people grinding it out. Like the underlying element of that is like feeling like you've got people that now rely on you. Their livelihood is dependent on the business that you've created success. How does that affect your mental state and decision making potentially?
It's a good question. It's definitely a lot of responsibility, especially for someone my age, especially when people that work at Posh are literally, I think, like 14, 15 years older than me. But I think that really all that provides is, again, more validation, and a duty to give back to them for their trust that they've instilled in me as someone who, at the end of the day, this is my first job. Like, right? So like they are 15 years older than me, and they moved from other cities to come work at this company where this kid, it's his first job, and he's kind of learning as he goes, right? And they're here because they believe in my ability, even though it's my first job, to run this company properly, and they believe in the vision and the meaning of what we're working on. And so how could I do anything but give back to them for the respect they've paid me? Because I'm sure there's not a lot of 23-year-olds that they'd pay that respect to move their lives here and work on this mission with me. So it's definitely like overwhelming at times. I'd be lying to say it's not.
Yeah.
But it's also extremely validating and provides a shit ton of confidence that I don't think a lot of people at my age have, because, a lot of people my age are reporting to someone that old compared to them. And so I'll take the responsibility for the confidence that it instills in what we're doing.
What do you think it is about you that gives people confidence?
Beyond anything, I think it is the relentlessness, like even to just go on here publicly and talk about like how basically like nothing is as important to me as like the success of this organization. And I truly believe that, like, you can tell when people are lying about that type of stuff. Like, it's how I, interact with everyone in my life and take my life. And you can ask anyone close to me. That's exactly how I act. And so I think, no matter what, whether or not my skills have been developed enough because it's my first job, they're like, I've never met anyone as relentless as this kid. And like, A, I'm open to feedback and I'm always looking to learn, and B, like I will stop at nothing and prioritize nothing over the success of this organization. And so they know that regardless, like if shit hits the fan, like I'm going to figure it out, or I'm going to at least work as hard as humanly possible to figure that out. And I think that gives them a lot of, feeling of safety and confidence.
So what do your days look like as someone who is working relentlessly? How do you do that and maintain any form of consistency to not burn out? So what does a day look like for Avante?
I mean, working relentlessly as a startup founder, right, is not as gritty as it sounds. You're on Zoom calls in an air-conditioned office with a La Colombe in hand and my AirPods.
Sure.
I'm not like, you know what I mean? That's why I come back to, like, I know there's people that are literally starving, and there's people that are, Navy SEALs, and there's so many jobs that are so much harder than this. Like, this is not a hard job. It's about commitment, and it's about, like, dedicating a lot of time, right? And being very, very committed and having routine.
Yeah.
But it's about
what is that routine?
Working really, like, on the same thing for a long time, whether or not it's actually difficult. But like what the day-to-day is, right, is like, wake up around 6, I go to the gym for about an hour, run 2 miles, lift, depending on the day, back and by, chest to tries, whatever it might be. Get to the office around 8. We'll have a coffee, some breakfast. We'll read a book for about 30, 45 minutes. Try to do that every day, just to kind of get some new thoughts. No, not that fast, really, to be honest. But I think it's good to remove myself from everything that was going on in my head while I was at the gym, as well as before entering to the abyss of email. Just reading for a bit and removing myself from that and learning something new every day.
Yeah.
Then I'll get into my inbox and kind of just get into meetings for the day. I'll usually have probably like 4 or 5 hours of meetings and try to get like 2-3 hours of like what I'd call like deep work in, which I'm just like thinking high level about the company. But as as the company's evolved and we've gotten a lot of really awesome leaders to own most of the domains, like my job has really shifted from being a contributor to being a thinker, right? And someone who, I was reading this book the other day about you shift from being like chief execution officer to like chief inspiration officer. Where like it's called the founders it's called Scaling Through Chaos. It's by Index Ventures, and effectively what it talks about, right, is like you starting out as like executing and kind of doing support and all these different things, and then you move into this role where all you're really supposed to do is inspire both existing employees, potential employees to join the company, investors who are potential and existing, right? And just really inspire a lot of people to come together around this idea, and inspire really smart people who can do the execution themselves. And so boiling that down to the day-to-day, it really comes down to like, how can I maximize the number of hours where I'm learning new things that I can apply and use to tweak how different functions are working, and think about the world in a new way where I can expand the vision and expand how inspirational what we're doing is, right? What I'm talking about today was not how we were thinking about the company even a year and a half ago. It's all through learning and collecting as many ideas from other stakeholders as possible and boiling them down into like, well, what are people really thinking here, and what are they really excited about, and how can we collectively build things that not only people at the company, but any consumer who hears or learns about Posh could genuinely be excited about, so that you can inspire as many people as possible to join the mission. Yeah,
cool. And how do you maintain the company culture, especially in the down periods? Like in the difficult periods, what do you lean towards? Because I know you mentioned previously that, up and to the right is great and it's really, really good for morale, but it's not always up and to the right.
No, it's not. And anyone who tells you that it is definitely lying. Even the best companies have had moments where they've at least slowed in growth. It's a good question. I think it's all about framing, right?
Framing?
What I'm getting at there is like, you have to frame why things are the way that they are, right?
Yeah.
Guys, this is a down month because we've been more focused on optimizing processes and iterating and thinking more through how we can explode in the months to come, right? And so accepting a down period as a period of learning and restructuring and kind of getting your footing under you, right? So that you can explode again in the next few months. And there's actually a lot of down periods for us because in the event scene, as you know, it's seasonal, right? And so fundamentally, January, for example, is always bad. And as we've been at it for almost 4 years now, we can kind of expect when the down periods will be. And so that the morale is affected a lot less as we continue to scale, because we're already in, October, November, being like, guys, we got to go super hard and crush because January is going to be slow. We expect it. So that when January ends up being slow, no one's sitting here like with poor morale, because we all expected it, and we used that month, especially because it's January, to reset for the year, figuring out our OKRs, figure out our direction, etc. So it's really just about like planning ahead and knowing when things will be slow so that you can use that time to regroup.
Sure. It's sprinting and resting. Thinking, sprinting, resting, thinking.
It's a marathon, not a sprint, and that's what I was getting out about the startup analogy. It's like
it's a marathon of sprints.
It's a marathon of sprints. Yes, exactly.
I've never heard that before. I think I love that. Cool, thank you. Well, let's jump into some rapid fires, and then we'll get out of your hair. What's the biggest thing in the last 2 years that you've changed your mind on? It's not very rapid fire.
So many things. I'm trying to think of one. I think the most important thing that I've taken into account every day has been to appreciate the small moments and appreciate like the people that I get to work with. I think before it was all about like, why are we not at the next step? And right now it's more about like, how do we get to the next step, right? And I think that's a mindset shift of feeling like you deserve things because you're working so hard, right? And going out and getting upset when a VC tells you no, or you don't have the right talent in a certain position. And now it's more of a mindset of, well, let's just go work really hard to listen to the feedback that people are giving us. Why is certain talent not joining, right? Why are certain VCs saying no, etc.? And then taking that back to the drawing board and using it as a learning experience rather than resenting it, right? And so it's really just a matter of like changing your mindset on no to learn from it rather than resent it and internalize and personalize it, take it personally, right? Because it's never personal, right? You didn't fit a framework, especially in the tech space. Like, people are pattern matchers and they're looking for you to fit a pattern. If you didn't fit that pattern, you should not take that personally. You should understand what you need to do to fit that pattern.
Okay, cool. And what's the kindest thing anybody's ever done for you?
So earlier this year for our birthdays, my co-founder Eli's birthday and mine are a day apart, and our entire team painted. On the 8th, right? Yeah, I'm on February 8th and he's the 7th. And our entire team painted Nike Air Force Ones, Posh branded. So like yellow and black with a Posh logo on them, and surprised us, actually threw a surprise party for us at the office on our birthdays, and gave them to us, which was very, very nice. Took us to the bar after. It was very fun. But again, I think just we have a family, an iMessage chat called Posh Family that every team member's in. And I think that the culture is just, frankly, it's so nice, and it's not something that even was one time, but every day I'm very thankful for.
I love that. And what's a challenge you overcame that you never thought you would overcome in the moment?
Definitely social skills, right? I think when you're I think if you ask some people, they say I have horrible social skills, but at least being able to like hold a conversation. I think before, when I was in high school and things, I just couldn't talk to people at all. Ask my first asked girls out in middle school through a note. Like, didn't have, got to know. So it was not helpful, but
volume game.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just confidence in social skills.
What did you learn from that experience?
The worst someone can say is no, right?
It's very true.
And back to my earlier point, a no is just a learning. So you actually want to optimize for more no's, because then you're just going to learn a ton.
What's a couple of things come to mind. It's like every rejection is a redirection.
Yeah.
And I saw this video of Grant Cardone with his daughter talking about like doing cold calls, and he was like, if you get $100 or $1,000 per close, it's not $1,000 for one close and then 100 calls of $0. It's if it takes 100 calls to get one close, it's like $10 a call.
Right.
That's how you should be thinking about it.
Yep.
So every single time you get a no, you're a step closer to that one that's a yes.
Yep.
And you just amortize across all of them. And I like that approach because it gives you a little bit less like, it maintains kind of motivation in the face of challenges. It's like, this is just one step closer to what I need. So,
but only if you're really truly learning from those no's and not just kind of passing them off in one ear and out the other and thinking about the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've lost a bunch of chess games recently and I'm not learning it, but yeah, the concept is great. The concept is very, very clear. You need to learn from those no's and you need to reflect and keep moving.
Yeah,
for sure. What would be a recommendation for one book that somebody could read that would have the most impact on them if they could only read one book in their whole life? Like, this book will set off the catalyst of the rest of their life. What is it?
I'm a big reader, and I want to generalize this for rather not just like software founders. There's a few that come to mind. It depends on what we're trying to optimize for. I think The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. It's a very big read.
Book.
It's a very big read. He also did the 48 Laws of Power, and some other ones. But that
Mastery
book
is crazy
really,
as well.
Mastery is insane. But I think human nature is important, and I think it's the most general one I would suggest because it teaches you how to interact with every single archetype of person through your life. And so what it does is it boils down everyone in the world into a bunch of different archetypes and kind of tells you why they are the way that they are, what kind of trauma they might have had in their past, how they think about life, what their perspective is, and how, depending on your archetype, you should interact with them. And it just helps you no matter what field you're in, no matter what you're passionate about in the world, like how you interact with people and how you communicate and get your point across and hear them out, like, is everything. And the better you can do that, the better you can, achieve whatever you want in life, whether it's personally, professionally, etc. So Laws of Human Nature, it's a life-changing book.
Brilliant. I haven't actually read it, but it's on the list, so
definitely
I'll bump it up the list. What are you excited about at the moment that you'd like to let listeners in on?
So much. I think generally just I'm excited about empowering more people to get out and meet each other, right? And it's the summer right now. It's a fun time, nice weather. People were locked up. I feel like we still haven't fully came back from COVID yet. I feel like people still have some, reservations or kind of social skills they lost. And so
people are definitely traumatized.
Yeah, they're definitely a little different than before. So I really just am excited for people to not lose the social glue that makes us human.
Damn. Yeah, it's definitely been hard, man. It's been hard for a lot of people. And I think that's a really, really important point around the job that you're doing. And sometimes I wonder like why I bother running events. But at the core of it, it's to create meaningful, deep connections for people and provide a safe space for people to like connect and love and get ideas and be inspired. It's all part of that.
It's very important. Without an event, how's it going to happen?
Well, it's like the modern equivalent of people in a cave or like in a campfire just banging a drum.
Yeah, it is.
It really is.
Instead, it's like a DJ pressing a button.
Yeah. And where can people find you if they're interested in kind of learning about you more?
Anywhere, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Just look me up, Avante Price and Posh. Yeah, same thing. Posh.vip on Instagram, everything. And I am always excited to chat with new people. So if anyone wants to contact me, I'm more than happy to have a Zoom, or if you're in New York, then have a coffee.
Love it. And just the last question, what's the meaning of life?
Happiness. And that sounds generic, but I do think that happiness comes from belonging, which is achieved through events, right? Which is achieved through Posh. But I do think generally that, finding happiness and sustaining happiness, right? We all found happiness probably at least once or twice in our life, at least if it's a brief stint graduating school or something like that. I wouldn't know about graduating school, but we all have found happiness, but how do you sustain it for a long period of time? And if you can, I think people in old age, right? Like you always hear like, they're like genuinely happy all the time because they've found peace of some sort with life.
So
and I think
is underneath happiness peace?
I think happiness is derived from being at peace with existence as it is.
And how do you get to that peace?
You get to that peace with existence by feeling, frankly, appreciated for existing, which can only be done by validation of other people. Like, I fundamentally think as humans, like, we cannot be happy without other people making us happy. Now, monks would argue that, you know, that's maybe not the case, but like like most monks still exist in a community of other monks, right? Yeah. I don't know how many like completely lonely people there are in the world that live like in the middle of the woods by themselves that are happy. I think that human validation and other people validating your existence as positive is what is necessary for happiness. And the only way to achieve that is by meeting people, having in real life relationships. And the first step to that is through an event.
So connection and love, fulfillment, maybe I'm kind of hearing, and
fulfillment comes through, why are you fulfilled? Because other people are saying Adam exists, and that's a good thing. Like, that is really all it is, right? Like, if a bunch of people are telling you you exist, first they're validating, like, okay, like, you exist, you are here, like, this is not a figment of your imagination, like, you are here, and you are someone that is creating a positive effect on the world, or at least positive emotions in the person claiming that your existence. I genuinely think that's the key to happiness, and the more that you can achieve that validation of other people telling you you exist and I like that, that's really all that it is.
Cool. So just leave the world a little bit better in all your interactions, and that will eventually start to happen, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Avante, thank you for coming on the podcast. I appreciate your energy. Yeah, you're an inspiring man. Like, it's really sick. I love what you're doing. Keen to see it build.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Cool, man.
Cheers.
Awesome. And anyone listening, if you can give it a like, subscribe, and give the podcast a rating, it helps us a lot.